Hey bestie, it's time for your next session of Real Talk Friend Therapy with your favorite big sister auntie queen, Daysha Veronica. Hey y'all. Wow. I honestly feel like I got slapped with a brick, like several bricks after these election results. Let me first start off and say that I did not intend to take 2 weeks off. I usually take the first week of the month off. And if you're new here, I've been trying to find out which production schedule works best for myself and have found that doing 3 weeks on, 1 week off really works for me. So, just going forward, you can expect that it will either be the first week or the last week of a month that I will take off from posting. So I was trying to work on last week's episode, but whenever I sat down to do it, my brain I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle it. So for this week, I decided instead of doing what I initially planned, which real talk, I don't have the mental capacity to do right now, I would actually like to use this episode just to talk through how I'm processing the election, what can be learned from this, and how I'm thinking about moving forward with the choices that have been made by our lovely country. Now, if you're not interested in hearing that, you're kind of over the political hot takes and just the general conversation about politics, I take absolutely no offense. I get it 1000%, and I'll catch you next episode. But I personally needed to take space to process this. And if you want to engage with me processing, definitely feel free to send me a DM or again to engage in the Facebook group or the Patreon that we have. Links to those are in the show notes. Okay, so in all honesty, I basically blacked out emotionally after it was increasingly becoming clear that Trump was going to win again. Becky was actually here at the house with me and my boyfriend, and I decided to make some mac and cheese and cookies so that we could have comfort food on hand because, based on the polling, I knew this would be a nail biter, or at least I was led to believe that. So my purpose in making the comfort food was to soothe our anxiety, but I always felt that, we were going to come out victorious. I was like, I know this is going to be close. I didn't imagine that I was making mac and cheese to drown my sorrow in rather than it just kind of comforting me through the ride of what would be tight but would ultimately be victorious for Kamala Harris. And I don't know, I guess that I hate that I was so naive to believe that America could elect not only a woman president, but a Black woman president, a South Asian, which, amongst the Asians is essentially Black, but a South Asian woman president. Like, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but yeah, I really thought that she had a chance. And to be honest, I've been pissed ever since she got into the race, and the polls have always had them neck and neck, no matter what crazy shit Trump did. And, maybe that should have been the first sign or clue as to what was to come, but it's just so crazy because I listened to another podcast called The Big Flop. I'm obsessed. I actually really highly recommend it. It's a recap of all of the biggest failures that have happened across different industries, and it's not only super fascinating, but really funny as well. I, again, highly recommend. And they did this episode not too long ago about this guy who was running for president. Howard Dean, I think his name was. I meant to research that. Let me see. Let me just double check. Howard Dean. Yes, his name was Howard Dean. He is the former governor of Vermont. And so during a campaign rally, he basically did this weird yelp, scream, whimper thing while he was super passionate and in the moment about how far his campaign was willing to go. Like, he was passionate about his campaign going the distance. And I believe this was during the primary. So he's like, we're going to take it to, I don't remember the order. Like, we'll take it to Iowa. We'll take it to North Carolina. We'll take it to da da da. And he's like, he does this, like, literally, like, that's the sound that he makes as he's just kind of enveloped in his passion. And, the Yelp scream whimper thing, it was weird. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that shit was weird. But if you told me, especially knowing what I know now, that it was the thing that was gonna torpedo his campaign, oh, I'd be like, bullshit. Like, this guy walked so that Trump could like fucking faster than run. But that's exactly what happened. The media jumped all over it and it created this PR nightmare that for some reason he could not recover from. So, to know that, and to know that at one point, we as a society had standards that were so lofty that even just a weird little display of passion could derail someone's campaign. But now we're at a place where just blatant lies and misinformation and disinformation and all the ways that you can say fake information are just merely tolerated on the campaign trail. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to process that or hold that information. I don't know how to deal with Trump being elected again. I don't know how to deal with the fact that the polls were wrong in the worst way possible, because it was already such a fucking kick in the gut to see Kamala scramble to put together a campaign in like 3 months because her predecessor left her out in the lurch. But she did it fabulously, you know, like for her to do what she did in such a short period of time and to have the impact she did and to raise the money that she did, like, girl, that's what they mean by black girl magic, okay? I know people be wanting to hate on, oh, black girl magic, like y'all ain't special, whatever. And I'm like, this campaign has shown the true magic that exists in black women when they are called to the task. Like, fuck out of here. But like to see her actually just take the whole process seriously while Trump is just trolling the whole time and doing dumb shit for photo ops, like the whole McDonald's thing and the garbage truck thing. Like, it was truly the epitome of the saying that black people, but black women in particular, have to work twice, but for real, like 3 and 4 times as hard as anybody else just to get half. And she didn't even get half. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Kamala is not a perfect person. I am not afraid to admit that she had her flaws. And, you know, like I wasn't, sorry, I'm like playing around with shit on my desk. I was not initially like, you know, enthused about it. But I truly find it so embarrassing, like deeply, sickeningly embarrassing that it was projected to be neck and neck, and even that was wrong. Like, this election was just such a sobering slap in the face to Black American women everywhere, or, you know, at least the 92% of us. I don't know what's going on with the other 8, but, you know, again, to each their own. Let me not say that. Because I respect people not wanting to vote for her. I respect Black women for not wanting to vote for her, or Black people. We're not a monolith. I think I just struggle with what we know is at stake for us in particular, for those that decided not to vote for her. And I know a lot of people have been trying to say, you know, it's the economy. The economy's so bad. I think he's gonna help me put more money back in my pocket. But like, not only were his economic policies garbage, and if it's not clear yet, I voted for Kamala. And I know I don't owe anyone objectivity in this, but even trying to be objective about the policies presented by the two, Trump offered absolutely nothing beneficial for the economy or putting more money in Americans' pockets. Or I should say average Americans' pockets. Now, did I think Kamala had an uphill battle enacting her policies? Hell yeah. Especially now knowing that the Senate and the House went to Republicans. But for people to say that this election was solely about the economy and that they wanted the person that was going to put more money in their pocket in the office and then to pick him, bitch, what? Literally, a group of politically independent economists put out an article months ago saying that everything Trump proposed, if enacted, would actually cause inflation to skyrocket. Trump literally praised Elon Musk for his disdain of unions and overtime. No tax on overtime? Y'all really think that man that has said shit like that is going to try and preserve overtime? There will be no taxes on it because it won't exist. So what I really find myself struggling with here is the blatant lie that people are not only telling themselves, but that they keep trying to sell to the rest of us who are not only facing the same economic hardships, but now also real threats to their livelihood under a second Trump presidency. Like, real talk, this election was not about the economy. And that's why a lot of Harris voters who have friends and family who voted for Trump or fucking messy ass Jill Stein are coming in real firm and real strong with their boundaries or just ending relationships altogether. And you know what? I commend them on that because I really think we've all forgotten that we don't owe anyone a relationship with them. We don't owe anyone our time, our energy, or our support. Again, not our parents, not our siblings, not the people we've known for 20, 30, 40 plus years. We owe no one anything. We choose to do those things. We choose to maintain these relationships. Yes, we need to feel a sense of belonging and connectedness to survive, but we don't owe anyone a connection with us. We decide who we want to have relationships with based on values, chemistry, and proximity. Now, if you've listened to the Making Friends Across the Political Aisle episode, then you know that we don't have to have the absolute same values to maintain a relationship, but the values have to either complement our values or the person has to add value to our lives in a way that allows us to have empathy for why they hold the differing values and views that they have. So for example, I am partially in the woo-woo camp. I love tarot, I love astrology, I love crystals. I find immense value in these practices. I say partially only because if anyone is watching Married at First Sight this season, even I struggle with woo-woo people like Carla making us all look crazy, even though, you know, she and I love all the same things. But I'm team woo-woo, and Becky, who is my best friend, she's not into that stuff at all. It means absolutely nothing to her. Her parents are both doctors. She has always been raised to have a very practical, scientific view of the world. However, we can and we do have a successful friendship because even though she doesn't believe in those things, she holds space for my experiences with them. She values how my belief in these practices are a source of optimism and positivity for me. So even though she doesn't believe in it, I think that she loves what she sees that it does for me, because the ability to persevere in the face of struggle is something that we both value and bond over. For her, developing that sense of perseverance comes from a more practical and logical place. For me, it comes from a spiritual place. So we both don't hold spirituality in the same regard, but our friendship works because our values are complementary. We're both invested in being positive and optimistic people, but our approach is different. So it leaves room for us to learn from each other and have empathy for our differences. And you know, it's so funny with her because the more she learns about it, like she'll do something and I don't even have to say it. She'll just be like, I know, so Aries of me, right? And I'm just like, yup. So again, they don't have to be the same. But the issue at the heart of what is happening with Trump supporters is that by voting for this man, it's really hard to extract who he is as a person from who he is as a politician and his policies. Or at least it's hard to do that for people who identify like me, who were Harris supporters. Like, it's so interesting. A lot of people who voted for him will do this weird thing where they're like, oh, you know, I wouldn't be friends with the guy, or I wouldn't have him over for dinner, or I wouldn't bring him to church with me. I wouldn't socialize or want to hang out with the guy, but I trust him to make me richer. I trust him to have my best interests. Not even to have your best interests, but to act in your best interests. They trust him to do that. And that's where it's hard to be mad. I just get really, really confused. And I'm not trying to be judgmental of Trump supporters or people who voted for him. I'm truly just trying to be real. Because when you say that, you're acknowledging that he does not have great moral character, which is why you wouldn't want to be associated with him. But at the same time, you're also saying that you trust him. And I just don't know any other situation where we would say, yeah, that person has terrible moral character and an awful temperament, but I trust them. You know, like, make it make sense. Because, okay, back in the day, when we had Obama versus McCain, right? They both had the same general temperament, the same level of respect for one another and just people in general. And people felt that way about them. You know, they had a similar level of experience in politics. And so when you were voting, it really wasn't a question of character and trust. It was really about whose policies you liked better and whose vision for the country you aligned with. Like, I love that there are these clips of John McCain going viral right now that show him being confronted by his own supporters who tried to denigrate Obama with obvious lies about where he was born and other racist shenanigans. And McCain is like, look, he's a good man. I cannot indulge these lies that we're spreading about him. You know, real talk, we just have different views on what we think is best for America. You know, both candidates had the shared value of integrity. So then when it came to voting, if you voted for McCain and I voted for Obama, it wasn't something to fracture a relationship over because both were strong candidates with a sense of integrity and purpose. And so our voting differently was truly just a matter of policy. You know, it didn't have to be explained that they both gave a shit about humanity and the Constitution and the right of law. Like, that was inherent. And, you know, I say this with a caveat. I'm not trying to paint McCain out to be a saint. I don't know a ton about what he was proposing at the time because I was young and not super into politics when he ran. But my point with bringing up that situation between the two is that they both had core values as a human being that we could all be okay with as a country and them representing us. Like, you know, maybe I'm not a fan of your policy, but at least you don't make Americans look stupid and hateful and petty to the entire world. You know, at least you're not a convicted felon. The difference with Trump, though, is that he is morally flawed. No, he is morally corrupt. Everything he does is for his own self-interest. Now, if you happen to benefit, great. But he's not doing things to actually benefit or serve the American people. His whole campaign was nothing but dark, hateful rhetoric. And again, if you manage to somehow get access to the concepts of his plans, nothing about them felt in service to others. Like with no tax on overtime. I swear to you, I would feel no shock whatsoever if the no tax on overtime was him really telling you in a subtle but not so subtle way that there will be no tax because there will be no overtime. I want to be wrong about that. But again, his behavior, his actions, both past and present, his demeanor, the things that he says, all the aspects that we used to use to judge someone's trustworthiness, they never once allowed me to believe that he was actually going to enact policy that would help people, especially people like me, let alone the average American. Again, this vote was not about the economy. I totally understand and respect the real human desire to have economic security and prosperity. I will never downplay the importance of those values. But again, as we established, there was so much prior evidence from so many independent parties as well that his policies that he campaigned on would do nothing good for the economy. And it's straight up, it is wild that people are researching his policies and what it will actually mean for them after they voted for him. My God. So voting for him truly could not have been about the economy, unless a lot of Americans have a delusional understanding of their finances. I've seen a lot of humbling TikToks of people being like, you are not the 1% with your 3 barbershops or your 3 McDonald's franchises. You are not the person that Kamala was trying to raise taxes on, and you're crazy for thinking that one day you'll obtain that kind of wealth. Now, this is not me saying that you will never have wealth at all and that you won't have a lot of money. But to vote against your own present interests in the million bajillion chances that you are one day mega rich like Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or all these other billionaires? Like, that is some straight up Delulu level confidence. Like, CNN was obsessed with this woman named Pam who was at Kamala's town hall. And, you know, she was a widow with 2 kids in college. And she's basically the main income earner now that her husband is gone. And she wanted to know and get confirmation that Kamala's policies wouldn't make her tax contribution worse because paying for 2 kids to go to college was already squeezing her financially, and then inflation. And CNN kept acting like this woman gave such a poignant look into the struggles of everyday Americans and, you know, her really wanting to know this question about tax contributions. And I'm just like, Pammy, okay? Like, I was over here like, Pammy, how much money you making? Because Kamala's not trying to raise taxes on anyone who makes over 400K. You telling me you make more than 400K? Because if that's what you telling me, you're not struggling. Now, you can say you can say I'm not being understanding about that, but like, for real, at a certain income level, it's a spending problem and not an economy problem. A financial influencer that I love to follow has a saying that's like, you can't out-earn overspending. You can make all the money in the world, but if you spend it frivolously or without regard, that's on you, not the economy. And that's not to say that that's how Pammy is living, but I just think in American culture in general, we have a huge spending problem because we have a huge overconsumption problem. Like, I literally saw the most dumbass TikTok of this woman talking about how, you know, she's been having to count how much cheese she's eating because her daughter loves to eat pepperoni and cheese. And she's like, that's basically why I voted for Trump, because she's like, I don't want to have to go and get more cheese. Basically insinuating that cheese is too expensive. And like, everyone in the fucking comments is like, bitch, like, if you buy the pre-cut stuff, that's already more expensive than if you just bought the damn block by yourself and cut that shit up yourself. So again, we live... America is like, oh my God, we're so unserious. I cannot take it. We are such an unserious country. I cannot. Like, what? Where am I? We like legit truly don't know what it means to be broke. I find that out every single day, that people truly just don't know. But after these next 4 years, you truly will understand what it means to be broke and having to count your cheese, okay? Like, I knew this girl. We went to grad school together. And this bitch, you want to talk about... So... in grad school, we were offered what were known as teaching assistantships so that we could earn money for our degree. And so homegirl was always singing herself this pity party about how she's a waitress. She didn't make that much money. She didn't save that much money. How she basically was like, oh, I'm so poor. You know, that was always her sob story. She was so poor. She's white, in case you were wondering. In case you're wondering where this is going, she was white. So initially I felt bad for her, you know, because I didn't have a lot of money either, but she just made it seem like TA-ships were something that were really critical for her to have. And so, you know, in my mind, it's like, you know, if there's an opportunity between the two of us, I'm like, oh, I think maybe you should have it. You make it seem like you're not working with much. And I don't have a lot, but I don't feel like that I'm struggling as hard as you are. So you should probably have it. Or you should have priority over me. Come to find out, because homegirl would tell me, homegirl lived in a $1,600 one-bedroom apartment in the middle of LA, which, all right, in LA prices, for a one-bedroom, that's a steal. However, as an individual who is talking about they are broke and they ain't got money, and you live in a one-bedroom apartment by yourself, no roommates? I'm sorry, what? Okay, number 2. So homegirl lived like all the way across town. We went to UCLA. UCLA is in Westwood. She lived in Koreatown. Anyone who knows LA geography can tell you that's an expensive ass motherfucking Uber ride just going one way. And that girl would take that Uber to and from multiple days a week. And LA, like, people talk shit about the public transportation out here, but it's not that bad. I lived in LA for several years. I think legitimately 7 years, and I didn't own a car once. I took buses and trains. It is possible to get around. And that's literally how I got to grad school, because I lived in Hollywood and I would take a bus from Hollywood to Westwood because I was not fucking around with money, unlike my friend here. So, moral of the story is, I really just think that people don't know how to spend money. I really just think in America, we don't know how to be broke. Black people do. Black people do. Maybe some of the brown people, some of y'all, and some of the Asians, but black people know how to be broke. So we'll be okay. But like, I could never believe how much money this girl would be spending on stuff. And I'm just like, you do know, like, there's a bus. Like, you do know, again, like, when people are legit broke in LA, you know, you either try to get an affordable, crappy little studio like I had, although I really loved my studio. I loved my studio. And I made sure my studio was rent controlled, okay? Because that's what a hustler does when you don't have much money to work with, okay? So I got a rent controlled apartment. I was paying way below market value. You take public transportation, like, the way this girl was just throwing coins out the window and then wants to talk to me about how she's broke and deserves all the TA ships. Like, fuck out my face. Y'all don't know broke, okay? You don't know it, but you gon' learn. So anyway, back to my point, voting for him could not have been about the economy. And so when we are left to look at what Trump represents as a person, because really that's all we're left with, a lot of Harris voters feel like people who voted for Trump were actually after a draconian sense of power, male power, heterosexual power, white power. While I personally don't agree with this, I know a lot of Trump voters view him as strong and virile. And since women have been more empowered over the last 2 decades to be honest about their experiences with men in the patriarchy, I feel like men have really lost their identity. You know, women are graduating high school, college, and graduate school at higher rates than men. More women are becoming either the high income earner or sole income earner for their households. That was a huge identity marker for men in the past. And overall, I just think that, you know, men believe that women are making more societal gains than them. White people believe that black and brown people are making more gains than them. You know, straight people just straight up think that the LGBTQ community has taken over. And so I find it funny that a lot of the post-election analysis has been, oh, you know, Democrats are playing too much into identity politics. They're talking too much about pro-trans people and trans women in sports and blah, blah, blah. When literally, Democrats were out here cosplaying as Republicans this whole damn election. Like, Kamala was fucking out there with Liz Cheney and then talking about how she owns a Glock. Like, get the fuck out of here about Dems and identity politics. When the real talk is that the only one that was out here playing identity politics was Trump. Trump wants to make America white, manly, and heteronormy again. That is when a lot of his supporters believe that America was great, when they didn't have to acknowledge that BIPOC people existed or that y'all, we're gonna have to get LGBTQ people existed, or when women were dependent on them. They miss when being gay or trans was just a dirty secret, or when BIPOC people made less than them, or they didn't have to compete with them for things like housing and jobs. Like, any way you spin it, the idea of making America great again will always involve taking America back to a time where non-privileged groups always got less. So this is not me saying that all Trump supporters or people who voted for him are racist or homophobic or all the isms and schisms. But if you haven't taken a moment to critically think about why racists and homophobes and all of those people who align with those isms and schisms, they're on the same, you know, they're excited about him, they align with him, that's the problem. You might not be like that yourself, but you enable and empower people like that by voting for him. You make them feel comfortable. And if you're okay with making them feel comfortable for your own benefit, then it means that at some level, some cognitive level, you really don't care about my existence or all the other non-privileged groups' existences. And that's why I fully support liberals or, people from these groups or Harris supporters either taking a break from or enacting firm boundaries with people that they know who voted for Trump. And this is, again, not to say that I disregard our human desire to preserve our livelihood, to feel economically stable. I am not judging anyone for wanting to vote in their own best interests. That's literally why we vote. But to act like this election was solely about the economy, when all the actual racists and homophobes and misogynists and all the other people who are isms and schisms are out here and proud and emboldened by Trump's rhetoric and behavior, like that signifies to others a lack of caring and empathy and interest in wanting to have goodwill with other humans. It says that you're the type of person to turn the other cheek in the face of bad things, in the face of oppression, if it means that you'll get to make a couple more bucks. And also, I shame no one that has aspirations to be wealthy. I want to be wealthy, okay? But it's about how we want to achieve those things that ultimately signifies if a relationship is going to be successful. So I recently applied for a job, and the job was supposedly 80% remote, but they wanted the candidate to live near New York. And so I said I was open, but I needed more information. And through the interview we had, it basically became clear to me that they really wanted someone who was going to move. So I could have either lied and said sure, and gotten the job and been secretly working bi-coastal. But I was like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't speak positively to who I am as a person, especially if they find out, which I know they ultimately would. So I was honest, and I asked to see if we could work out a plan openly so there would be no secrets and as much transparency as possible about me working both coasts. And they ultimately decided not to go with me, which sucks. But as much as I want a job, I don't want it at the cost of having to be sneaky and lying. I'm just not that type of person. And it's not like I'm in a financial situation to be rejecting jobs. Like, I really need to find a job soon. But I know personally that I'd rather work a bunch of local part-time jobs where I can be open and honest if it comes down to that, than to be actively lying and scheming and doing all of this secret travel. I personally think that would bankrupt me more than just having the job. Now, some of y'all might be like, bitch, you crazy, okay? But again, we all have our own values. And, I'm not even trying to act like the decision I made was like the better decision. Next week, I literally might be like, why the fuck didn't I lie when I have to pay my mortgage? But whenever I'm in situations like that, I like to remind myself that there's a reason why I didn't do that. There's a reason why I made the choice that I made. And it's because I have a firm understanding of who I am and who I am not. And it's okay if that life is right for someone else. But that's what makes us different people. And the goal is not to make the quote unquote right decision in the eyes of others, but to make the right decision for ourselves. And so for some of you, that was voting for Trump. I can't judge you, or at least I should not judge you for that. I will say that I'm hella confused by you. But just like people who voted for Trump feel like they made the best decision, I also think those same people need to respect when the people who did not vote for him no longer want to be in community with you. And personally, I feel like when you truly make decisions with your best interests, there's no excess emotion. I feel like you're at peace and you carry yourself at peace. So I think the anger that people for Trump are experiencing when they get cut off from someone who did not vote for him, I think that's really coming from the fact that they are either lying to themselves and they know it, or they know deep down that they are lying to you in saying that they were just voting for the economy. Because I know I'm at peace with why I voted for Kamala Harris. I have no qualms in telling people that I was invested in Roe v. Wade being restored, because even though I live in a state and I'm also from a state where it's protected, I fundamentally believe women should have autonomy over their bodies, that the government should not be telling us what to do, and also, you can't control what time or what state you happen to be in if you have a miscarriage. Abortion care is health care. So I voted for that. And I know that I voted for her because as someone who has purchased a home, I know that down payments can be a huge barrier. And that by not planning to deport a large chunk of the workforce, not only would there be more housing construction, which she wanted to accelerate, and that would help with affordability, there would also be that down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, which, in case you didn't know, everyone would technically qualify for because you are considered a first-time home buyer again after 3 years of purchasing. And then hell yeah, I voted for her just because she's a Black woman and I wanted a female president. Her being Black was just the cherry on top of the sundae, okay? But when we talk about who Trump emboldens, I always find it funny that some Black people say, oh, you should leave the Democratic Party. They don't do anything for Black people. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They do the same thing for Black people and marginalized groups that Trump does for white people and others in privileged groups. They embolden Black people and women and LGBTQ people to get involved in politics, to run for office, to even feel like they can run for president. They are the only party out of the two major parties to push diverse candidates to be president, the highest motherfucking office in the land. That's huge. And then, if you want to get into the policy, they may not be perfect, but I can tell you they've tried and accomplished way more than Republicans ever have for Black people. And do not get me started on the whole Republicans ended slavery bullshit, because if people actually knew their history, they would know that the party switched ideologies after Lincoln, I believe. So again, this is not to paint Democrats out to be saints. I got my issues and my gripes with them too, but it doesn't change that their elevation of diverse candidates over the years is huge, because that tells Black kids what's possible. That tells women what's possible. That motivates and inspires people to believe that they can do it, which for real is half the battle. But Republicans, they embolden misogynists, racists, homophobes, transphobes, all the isms and schisms. And again, Democrats are not perfect, but at least they are emboldening the absolute opposite of that. And as long as that's the case, I cannot support the other side that's literally encouraging my own oppression. I also find it funny that there are videos going around social media that are kind of like they have a picture of Byron Donalds and oh my gosh, who's the other Black person? I don't think it's Mark Robinson, because I think everyone knew that he wasn't going to touch Mark Robinson with a 10-foot pole. But I think there's another... Oh, Tim Scott. There it is. It's Byron Donalds and Tim Scott. And it's Charlie Murphy laughing, being like, and the quote is like, where's my cabinet position? That's the thing. Obviously, we've seen people of color elevated within the Republican Party to be governors and senators and things like that. But when it comes time for the real serious shit, I don't even think that the people like Byron Donalds or Tim Scott can even trust that someone like Donald Trump or just Republicans in general would elevate them to those higher positions. You know what I'm saying? I don't even think that they trust it. And yet they will be out there stumping and, speaking so highly and so positively to get nothing. And you're telling me that I should leave the Democratic Party for that? So yeah, I voted for a Democrat as a Black woman who is openly aware of their flaws. And honestly, I'm at peace with that decision. And again, if someone said they reject everything I voted for and my reasons why, and thus felt like we could not be friends, I would not be mad. I would not be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're throwing away our relationship over politics. I would say, oh, thank you, and then keep it moving, because I'm proud of what I believe in. I find it hilarious that Trump voters get mad when non-Trump voters say, they're now saying, I hope you get everything you voted for. Because let me tell you, if the shoe were on the other foot and someone said that to me about Kamala, I would be like, oh my God, thank you. I hope I do. I really do. To be mad that someone says that to you tells me that you know what you did was fucked up. And to me, that just tells me that you would be an energy vampire, that this relationship would be such a drain on my well-being. It tells me that you are the person that is always getting into fucked up shit and making it my problem and forcing me to take on your negativity and you're angry, especially when you find out that those costs of eggs and that gas is about to be nasty expensive than what it is now. So I wholeheartedly respect non-Trump voters being like, nah, I gotta protect my energy and my finances. Yeah, I could not imagine being mad if someone said that. If they were like, we just wouldn't make good friends. I'd honestly be like, wow, how astute of you. Good looking out. It's been real. So if you're feeling devastated, if you're feeling lost, if you feel a sense of nihilism and like you don't know who people are anymore, I'm right there with you. I feel like this election wasn't just a loss for the Democrats, but really a loss for our collective sense of what it means to be a good person, as well as what being a good person affords you in life. Like, this election basically solidified the idea that you don't have to be a good person, a moral person, or even a mentally sound person to succeed. That it literally does not matter if you lie, cheat, or cry your way to the top. And honestly, that there's no value in being a good person as long as you're making money. Like, there is truly no point. And I hate that for us. I hate that for me. But as I sit with it, America's kind of always been like that, It's just that we're proudly saying the problematic, quiet shit out loud now. Like, I even found it funny back when Trump won the first time. And there were all these articles from parents and, you know what, let me be clear, white parents, about what do I tell my kids about someone like Trump being able to become president. And I emphasize white parents because the real problem is that Trump creates a modern day PR disaster for white people. Before Trump, and especially when Obama won, and it seemed like Hillary was going to win, we thought we were in this post-racial, post-isms and schisms society where there were no boundaries for any person anymore. Obama was supposed to be this representation, and Hillary, that literally anyone in America can just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and become the president. So black women, black people of color, women, y'all were actually just not good enough or deserving if you couldn't rise to the top. That racism and misogyny and all the other isms and schisms were basically no longer impediments to success. We were just being lazy and complaining. But then we got Trump. And Trump was not only obnoxiously all of those isms and schisms, but he brought out all of those people who are also like that out of the crevices, and proudly. And so I say white parents, and particularly white liberal parents, because Trump broke the post-racial facade that would have freed white liberals from doing the real work to absolve themselves of their isms and schisms. You might have to play that again to really hear what I was trying to say there. Trump made them have to do work, like talking to their kids about how deeply racist and fucked up this country is and has always been. Because when you really think about where Trump fits in all the other presidents of history, I'm pretty sure he's not the worst when it comes to being racist, homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, misogynist. Like, a good chunk of these motherfuckers had slaves. Trump is just saying the fucked up shit out loud in a way that no modern day president has ever said in public. That's the only difference. But when these presidents thought that no one was looking, they sounded just like Trump. They literally have secret tapes of Reagan and Nixon sounding just like Trump. But I will say, at least before, there was an ideal of being good people that we openly strived towards, and that felt nice. And now that the mask is off, that feels terrifying because a lack of regard for others is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from war and anarchy and a lot of other not really great things for humanity. But, maybe we needed this as a society and as humanity. I always say that I don't think the Me Too movement would have reached the depths that it had if Trump had not been president. I felt like because there was a moral vacuum in the presidency, we felt a collective responsibility to create justice as citizens. And so I hope, if people are not too despondent, that we'll still rise to the call, because this sequel is about to be balls to the wall insane. So I want to shower all of my Black American people, but especially my Black American women, with so much love, because we really did understand the assignment as well as the stakes. And, the other colors, they just played in our faces. Like, real talk, before this, I was always someone that was pro-identifying as POC because logically I understood that there's so much power in solidarity. And it's actually why racist white people are freaking out, because they are afraid of becoming the minority in this country. There's literally there's a video going viral right now of this white man blatantly putting it out there and saying that the only reason why he was ever interested in voting for Trump is because he is like, Trump will stop the dispossession of America towards people of color. That's how they think about us. They think that we're taking what is theirs. But let me tell y'all, shoot, after this election, don't call me POC nothing. I am a Black woman. And I know it wasn't all y'all. But it was a good enough chunk of y'all to make me realize that the solidarity and allegiance that other colors have will always be towards whiteness, even if it's in their worst interests and rooted in their oppression. You know, you may not like what I'm going to say, but I don't think on a grand scale that Latinos and Asians will ever want to be in true solidarity with Black people. And you know, I don't say that with malice. I really hope I'm wrong. I just say it to be real. But I think when it's easier to align yourself with white people, whether that's culturally through assimilation or phenotypically because it's easier to blend in your hair and your features, again, dark shit but real shit, I just think that the other colors feel better about themselves when Black people are at the bottom of the totem pole. And as long as we're at the bottom, y'all are okay with whatever happens because at least it's not y'all. And I just want to reiterate again, this is not to offend. It's just honestly the message that came across crystal clear to me from the results of this election. Like, I think the other colors can have a level of cognitive dissonance about being of color that Black people or honestly dark-skinned people will never be able to have. Like, I watched, y'all, oh my God, the most infuriating TikTok that featured this Latino family being profiled voting for Trump. And it was infuriating not because they were Latino, but because the light-skinned husband and wife themselves were once illegal immigrants. They crossed the border illegally in the 80s and were able to get amnesty by no other than fucking Ronald Reagan, which, okay, let's talk about a plot twist, okay? But they voted for him, for Trump, because they don't see themselves as the illegal immigrants that Trump is talking about. They see themselves as quote unquote good illegal immigrants. But the illegal immigrants that are now crossing the border are quote unquote criminals. And they say that these new illegals are coming here because they're running from the law and they're not here to have a good life like this couple has now. Y'all, the cognitive dissonance, like, honestly, this is a whole new level. We legit need a new word for the level of removed from reality people have become. But I will say, as someone who loves studying human behavior, this will be one of the most telling periods of history about humanity and human nature. Like, there is about to be a renaissance in psychology, y'all. And I cannot wait for the books that can like give us insight as to why so many people put their trust blindly into the hands of a man that truly could not be any less trustworthy. Because here's the thing, that Latino family that I was talking about, they are aware of the risks. They didn't deny that. They even admitted to having undocumented family members in the country right now. And when the reporter asked them about if they're worried about the mass deportations, the wife said yes and no, because the undocumented people she knows are doing good and they're not breaking any laws. So she thinks they'll be okay. And the husband believes that he's only going to go after the bad people. But this is why, so this is why when I do my deep dive episodes on like general and vague words like friendship or vulnerability, I always start with a dictionary definition and then I give my own definition. And that is to make sure that we are all clear about how I am choosing to use these words going forward. And what's so crazy to me about them trusting Trump to only deport the quote unquote bad people is that Trump has never been clear about what it means to be a bad person. I mean, yes, he talks about the murderers and the rapists, but many people would also consider this couple here to be the bad people because they came here illegally. They didn't do it the right way. I'm like, I know I'm preaching to the choir at this point, but man, y'all, I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I'm devastated. Like, I really feel like something in me has died. Like, my sense of wanting good for people or even caring about others. I feel like I feel such a radical shift in myself. When I started going back to therapy in grad school, my therapist told me that my natural desire to see the good in people was admirable, but that she could also see that it was a huge source of what was bringing me pain. She was like, you're too loyal to people who haven't really earned your loyalty. And I've always been aware of this, and I've been working on it for the last few years. But this election, I just feel like it made everything that she was saying to me so crystal clear. When Becky and I were processing the results, she told me about this saying she heard where it was like, men are tribal and women are earthly. And I think a better way to describe earthly would be communal. Men tend to think about helping and protecting those they care about and only those that they know, versus women tend to care about, let me rephrase that. Black women tend to care about the community and believe that we individually do better when we are all taken care of. And like, that has also been hitting me like a ton of bricks too. And like, I'm like, honestly, maybe we need to go tribal. Black women, like, I love, like, after the election, just seeing a bunch of Black women being like, I am looking for Black women only. And that is all. Like, I am here to support my Black sisters these next 4 years. And I love that. I love that for us. I know deep in my heart that, like, being tribal is not the answer, but, like, I do think it's what needs to happen for the next 4 years at least for people to learn not to fuck around with other people's feelings. The other thing, so the vulnerability episode and the boundaries episode, they've been sitting heavy on my mind since Election Day because of the conversations that Calix and I had about America becoming an unserious country. It's like everything is a joke, and the thing I struggle with the most is the fact that Trump supporters do not take anything he says seriously. But then on top of that, they laugh at liberals or just concerned citizens who do take what he says seriously, as if we don't get the joke or that we're being too emotional and thus uncool. And my thing is, if we're not supposed to take what he says seriously, when are we supposed to take what he says seriously? Because then otherwise, you're just asking me to trust an unserious person. Which literally in any other circumstance we would reject, or at least I thought we would. I don't know. I would reject that. And I just don't understand when taking someone's words seriously became so uncool or not an important judge of character. Like, a lot of people say that they like him because he says what he means and he means what he says. But then at the same time, they say not to take what he says too seriously. I'm sorry, what? I don't get it. I don't get it. I truly don't get the desire to do the mental gymnastics that people will do to defend him. But I will say, as I've taken time to think, I think part of it is because we collectively in our modern day have lost the ability to take an L, to just admit defeat. We've lost the ability to admit when we're wrong or to hold that we've hurt someone, which is why we then downplay other people's emotions when they confront us with them. Listen, I even despise that I just did that, okay? But I despise being in the wrong. I am a Leo. I am a fire sign. Even if that means nothing to you, like, ultimately it means we never like to be wrong. But I was also raised to have respect for people and their feelings. So when my boyfriend calls out my yelling when we're arguing as problematic, I hate that because he's right. It's unhelpful, it's disrespectful. And while my ego hates being called out, I also don't gaslight him and say bullshit like, well, why can't you be more of a man and take it? Or, I don't say shit like he shouldn't take my yelling seriously. Something I've said, but I was like, this isn't an excuse. It's just that, like, I grew up in an expressive family, but I don't offer that as a reason why he should take it. I say it for myself. It's like, oh, I think I do this for this. And so all of this is to say, like, I own my shit. I apologize, I look inward, and I try to work on it. And I'm not going to act like that's easy. Again, ego is a huge pill to swallow. But as Calix, our guest, said on the Boundaries episode, if we truly care about and honor our friends and our loved ones and our family, we have to be willing to do the work. We have to be willing to acknowledge that we're not perfect and that we're going to make mistakes. That's part of the human experience. And I think the thing that truly terrifies me about Trump is his inability to take accountability. In his mind, he's never wrong. He's always the victim. He's always being bullied. And I just, like, if Trump wasn't Trump and he was just some person you knew and he acted the way that he did, you'd be so over him, let alone giving him trust to take care of the entire country. You'd say he was a bitch baby who needs to hold his L and move on. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Which again goes back to the idea that voting for him was not about the economy. Because I just don't think there's anyone else in our lives that we would actively be okay with defending the way that people defend him. But one thing I will say is that I hope when this is all said and done in 4 years, I hope that we as a society have a greater respect and greater understanding of emotions and the real value of learning how to regulate our emotions and how to not downplay people's existence and their voting choices. I hope that we can learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable when it comes to taking accountability. We need to learn how to hold our L's again. And I hope that while I know people need a break from others, I hope that at some point and in some way, we can find a way to have productive conversations about our differences. This is not me saying we need to be best friends in order to have these conversations, but whether we like it or not, we have to coexist. There's not enough space or money for people to just go off grid and completely cut out what they don't like about the world. But I will say, as a Black woman, it is not lost on me that my desire for coexistence is because it's really the best that I can ask for from a deeply racist society. White people and men and other privileged groups don't have to care about coexistence in the same way when they've systematically had the means to make their worldview dominant. So I hope for it, but I also recognize that in order for that to happen, we'd all have to care about coexistence, not just marginalized folks. All right, that's all I got for you this week, besties. I'm sending lots of love and hugs as you work through processing this election. Again, I highly recommend listening to the Boundaries series from a few episodes back as we head into the holidays and decide who we want to spend time with. And, do what you need to do to protect your peace. As always, if you have any thoughts, feelings, or revelations that you want to share with me, please feel free to hit me up on social media within our free Facebook group or on our exclusive Patreon page. Also, I was just looking at the calendar the other day, and the end of our first season is coming up. I truly cannot believe it. Y'all have been riding with me through so much chaos, and I'm just so deeply appreciative that you take time to let me be part of your day and your routines, and I'm so excited for the future. Interesting choice of words. I'm excited for the future of the podcast. I can't say I'm generally excited for the future, but December 19th will be our last episode of the season, which means we'll have about 4 episodes left. So if there's anything that you would like me to cover before I close up shop for the holidays, let me know. Otherwise, I will get back into regularly scheduled programming next episode. Thank you so much for riding through me processing for this episode. I really needed it, but that's it for now. I'll catch you next time, besties. Your girl is out. Loving Real Talk Friend Therapy? Of course you are. So don't forget to show us some love with a 5-star review wherever you are listening and to join our Patreon to unlock bonus recordings, videos, private chats, and more.